John Parker always valued peace. His civil engineering job remained stable at 42. His family lived in a calm suburban neighborhood, thanks to his success. He was honest and devoted in his marriage to Lisa, his high school crush. Lisa Parker married and had a kid at 39. She worked part-time as a graphic illustrator, caring for Emily, their only kid, and working. Emily was clever and accomplished at 16. She loved music and was close to both parents. The Parkers looked beautiful. Party planning, neighborhood gatherings, and family outings were their activities. John always felt blessed to have a supportive buddy and a happy daughter. Something dreadful happened one evening after that. Winter was coming since it was chilly and clear at night. John arrived home early from work and was excited to make his family a delicious lunch. His grandma's recipe Stamus lasagna smell joined him. He heard laughter from within the home as he approached the front door. Though warm and comforting, the sound stopped him. He was ready to open the door when something sounded. Lots of noise began. Unheard speech intrigued him. He put his ear on the door because he was curious and felt uneasy. He initially heard background sounds. However, he heard Emily's cheerful voice. "Mother, your boyfriend's Johnson rocks. Thank you for telling me about him. He invites you to his next event." John was hit hard by those statements. He felt cold and his heart was racing. He always felt Lisa was leaving, but he never expected her to betray him. His jumbled thinking made it hard for him to understand what he heard. Emily spoke about her mother's suitor with more than simply familiarity. The casual comment that Lisa will participate confirmed her attendance. The mention to Johnson suggested a tighter connection. John staggered back from the door, terrified. The lasagna shattered on the porch when he dropped it. He was so astonished that he thought the world had collapsed. He bolted from the home without looking back. He needed to ponder and exhale. He felt angry, bewildered, and deceived, and his thoughts were stormy. John went immediately, and without explanation. He left a letter saying, "I can't stay," then packed a suitcase with essentials. "I need time to think. Please respect my privacy." He didn't reveal his plans, location, or return date. The house was quiet today, but it used to be full with laughing and love. After John didn't return home, Lisa was bewildered and grieved for days. She searched but couldn't find him. Their neighbors and acquaintances were confused, and rumors spread about their unexpected departure. Emily stayed quiet because she loved her parents but was ashamed of her actions. Her teenage confidence is crumbling because she feels horrible about what she did. However, John had relocated to a small rented cottage in the woods, a considerable difference from his former life. He spent the days alone trying to process the shock and plan his next move. It felt like it would never get over the profound deceit. He was always active and realized leaving wasn't enough. John hired Mark Turner, an experienced private detective, to pursue justice. Turner became a close friend due to his discretion and efficiency. John's desire was clear. Find out how Lisa feels about her employer, Richard Evans, a wealthy and powerful businessman who has arrived here. Turner's findings were alarming, known for being brutal and compassionate. His financial agreements were typically kept secret, and rumors of malfeasance followed him around. The detective determined Lisa and Richard were seeing each other for many reasons. They were extensively involved in unlawful and dishonest business. Richard's misdeeds affected the neighborhood. John was outraged to find Lisa had lied to him and endangered Emily. Lisa dating Richard put their daughter in risk, making the situation look dire. The last surprise was Lisa's admission of involvement in Richard's stuff to do. John felt deceived by everyone, not just his wife. He never trusted anyone again. John found evidence of Richard's and Lisa's illicit activity with Turner's aid. The proof was terrible, but the procedure was long. The ultimate blow to John was discovering that Lisa had exploited Richard's resources to aid him in his unlawful operations, involving herself in several felonies. John was moved to act forcefully by his morality and desire to stop the predicament. Turner presented his evidence to the police enforcement, and Richard Evans and Lisa Parker were immediately charged with major felonies. The media covered the case extensively. John wasn't commonly mentioned. His retribution was successful, but it cost him dearly. Emily had to navigate a damaged environment and a chaotic family. John avoided the conflict as Lisa and Richard fought in court. He wanted to rebuild his life and escape his past. The betrayal stung, but he hoped the scars would heal. He had no clue that this was the start of a new chapter that would test his strength and modify his views on family and forgiveness. The revelation that Lisa deceived John Parker and had an affair with Richard Evans 5 years ago upended his life. Even though his past traumas were still fresh in his thoughts, time had allowed him to heal. John, a freelance civil engineering consultant, went to a little town that was considerably different from his previous home. He maintained a front of normalcy, but his past life haunted him, and sometimes infiltrated his thoughts. John's new existence was tranquil, unlike the mayhem he fled. The peacefulness of the little village was a nice departure from his hectic existence. He moved to a small city-edge home, in locations where stillness was soothing without threatening. Every day was the same for him. He worked from home, socialized sometimes, and found pleasure in solitude. But he still felt that some prior problems hadn't been resolved, causing restless nights and fleeting thoughts of happier times. John heard a tap on the door while sorting papers in his study on a cold September afternoon. It surprised him because he seldom had guests. He opened the door to see a forlorn, fatigued young woman on the threshold. Her shorn head and blank eyes said she was afraid and ready to quit. John briefly questioned her identity. A trembling lady said, "Dad." John's heart skipped a beat. Seeing her so different from the energetic kid he knew startled and saddened him. "What happened?" John asked Emily, his voice barely above a murmur, as she walked into the house. As she sat down in a chair, her body shook, showing that she was upset. John quickly made her a cup of tea, but his hands were shaking the whole time. He sat next to her and tried to understand how serious the situation was. As Lisa's financial situation worsened, she was forced to make increasingly desperate choices. Emily, now a teenager struggling with the loss of her family's stability, found herself adrift. Her mother's involvement with Richard's criminal activities had isolated them from their community and friends. In the midst of the chaos, Emily excelled academically and clung to her music as an escape. However, the pressure and weight of her mother's decisions began to take a toll on her mental health. Lisa's erratic behavior and financial desperation led her to make a series of poor decisions. John's heart sank as Emily told him about the mean things people had done to her. Lisa's choices had caused Emily a lot of pain that no child should ever have to go through. There will be consequences. Her leaving was a desperate attempt to protect herself, and she had to find safety in several places before moving on. Her dirty clothes showed her trouble. "I couldn't stay with Mom anymore," Emily said, crying. She continued promising improvement, but it became worse. "I left to survive. I didn't sure whether you wanted to see me, but I had nowhere else." John's heart wrenched at Emily's comments. He felt guilty and sad for not supporting her throughout those crucial years. His sense of betrayal overtook him, and his search for justice that he hadn't fully understood Lisa's actions on their daughter. "I'm so sorry," Emily, John said, his voice filled full of feeling. "I thought about how this was something I had never meant to happen. I thought that my choice to leave was the right thing to do. For some reason, I didn't know how bad your problems were." Emily's face showed a mix of relief and lingering sadness as she nodded. "You're not to blame. I just needed to find you. I didn't know what else to do." John took Emily's hand with care. He could see how vulnerable she was in her eyes and knew that getting back together with her would be a difficult and delicate process. For the first time in years, John felt like he had a purpose in life, even though the road ahead would be long and full of problems. He made up his mind that he would give his daughter the love and support she needed. "The first thing we should do is make sure you're comfy." While standing up, John told them, "You are now safe here." John realized that their journey was far from over as they discussed what to do next. Even though the memories of the past kept coming back to haunt them, they were given the chance to start over. Although the scars of betrayal and the lingering anger from old grudges would need to be healed, the father-daughter bond was a bright spot in the darkness. John Parker's peaceful life was forever changed when Emily arrived. Her pain and the shadows of his past caused him to feel a storm of emotions he couldn't handle, but one thing became clear: he had to keep his daughter safe and face the dark world that had had such a big impact on their lives. The illegal network continued even though things seemed quiet. After Richard was arrested, his friends and family became more depressed and in danger. Lisa's short jail time did not stop Richard's friends from seeking revenge or continuing their illegal activities. John knew that facing these constant dangers head-on was the only way to keep Emily safe. "Hey," Mark said, "I've been keeping an eye on Richard's friends, and it looks like they're planning something big. I'm worried they're watching you and Emily." John was shocked by the news like a bolt of lightning. He thought removing Richard would give him peace of mind, but Richard's network remained a major threat. "Are you sure?" "Finally, Mark, what do you think we should do next?" John asked with a strong voice. Mark's advice was simple: first, make sure Emily is safe and your home is secure. A group of people I know will look out for you. A week later, John and Emily were having a quiet night at home when they heard a loud banging on the door. John had a sharp sense, and he saw a face through the peephole. Mark Turner looked messy and irritated. As John opened the door, Mark said, "John, we have a problem. They plan to implement their plan tonight, so we must leave immediately. Time is limited. Take what you can and go." John hurriedly grabbed some items and got Emily ready to depart. He saw her anxiety in her eyes but smiled confidently. "It'll be okay. Stay with me." Mark took them to a safe place his contacts had prepared. The unfamiliar place contrasted with John's home. A stronghold on the town's outskirts with monitoring and defenses. John and Emily settled in, but they knew they were still in danger. Mark's contacts guarded the safe home at night. John, Emily, and Mark waited in quiet, nervous about the scenario. Each minute felt like an eternity as hours passed. Around midnight, the sound broke the silence. After the break-ins, Mark's connections and the assailants squared off. John and Emily gathered in a secure area, their hearts beating as they heard the struggle outside muted. John was trying to be cool for Emily, but the situation was dire. Battle sounds faded after what felt like hours. Mark's contacts repelled the assailants, but the agony continued. Mark entered the room, relieved but sad. "They're gone," Mark said tiredly. "But this isn't over. We need to find out who's behind this and make sure they're brought to justice." John and Emily were terrified but unharmed. Though the immediate threat was past, John realized how hazardous their situation was that night. John understood they needed to act immediately to halt the danger. In subsequent days, Mark investigated Richard's connections. They found major criminal network members and gathered evidence to arrest them with police assistance. Their investigation paid off when they discovered a critical piece of evidence linking the remaining colleagues to a planned attack on. After acquiring evidence, authorities raided Richard's criminal network to destroy it. News of the arrests and the crimes endangering John and Emily's life spread. Lisa still had legal issues, but dismantling Richard's criminal business was more crucial. John focused on repairing his life with Emily without violence. Both father and daughter had suffered terrible tragedies yet emerged stronger and more understanding. Despite difficulties, their friendship deepened. John and Emily refounded their life. Health and healing were their priorities. The previous scars will always be there, but they had overcome the darkness together and found a better future. They supported each other and built a life that honored their strength and optimism for the future. The final stand was about rediscovery and atonement, not just fighting outside dangers. John and Emily had overcome their past and were ready to face the future with courage and confidence. They faced an unknown future together, united by their unshakable tie.